and welcome everyone. I'll just go through a quick agenda for this webinar today. So we're going to be having a general overview look at the fabrication parts and their workflows within Revit. So I'm going to go through a few slides to begin with around the new features and some of those features that are coming in to Revit with the fabrication parts. I want to talk a little bit about loading in a fabrication database, both a default one and a custom one. And then I will jump into a live demo where I want to just show a few little workflow tips along with our A2K database offerings. And I also want to at the end touch on our revtag, A2K's revtag add-on tool and the new features there, as we have just released a new version of that in the last few months. So without further ado, let's continue on. So I'll just start with this slide. This is a bit of a sort of like a landscape of the MEP solutions from Autodesk. So many of you will be familiar with a lot of these softwares. Generally speaking, you can see Revit at the top is obviously goes across all facets of the project, from concept all the way through to now fabrication, which we're going to talk a little bit obviously today. You can also see some of the other software that you will be using is Navisworks when you're in design phase for coordination. But then when you come over to the detail side of things, this is when we're starting to look at, and some of you will be starting to look at the, if not already, the fabrication solutions. So there are the legacy fabrication softwares from Autodesk, namely CAD/MEP, SMEP, and CAMDuct. CAD/MEP is slowly, if for want of a better word, being phased out as such in terms of the workflows in there and the detailed workflows, and the fabrication parts and functionality that is now within Revit is taking over from that sort of that prior CAD/MEP, those CAD/MEP AutoCAD workflows. So that detailing is now inside of Revit, which we're going to be having a bit of a look at today with these fabrication parts. SMEP and CAMDuct are still there in the picture. So when you are then going to do takeoffs and estimation, you would be taking that over into SMEP, which you can do from Revit. You can export models, ductwork and pipework fabrication models from Revit out to MAJ and go across into SMEP for your estimations. And then from there, you can also take that same MAJ file over into CAMDuct when it's ready to fabricate to build the ductwork or the pipework, for example. So you can take that MAJ to CAM, and you can then take that straight to the machines. So just a little bit of an overview of the general landscape there. Let's keep moving. So for those of you that are not aware, this is just a slide to kind of demonstrate, to sort of show what we will be looking at today. So this is just a picture of the fabrication parts on the right-hand side there. Those fabrication parts are a specific category now in Revit, and you can use those to build those fabrication ductwork from scratch in Revit, or you can use the design fabrication conversion and convert Revit ductwork over into these fabrication parts as well. So you can kind of see once it's in fabrication, you get the detail of being able to split it up, for example, into buildable segments, constructible segments. You can got the hangers that come into play with the fabrication parts as well. Okay. So in terms of loading in and using the database features in Revit, there was previously an extension in Revit for MEP Fabrication. It was previously, prior to Revit 2021 and 2022, it was in the add-ons, found on the add-ons tab. But just be aware that from 2021 and now in 2022, obviously, it is now a part of the out-of-the-box software installed when you install Revit. So when you install Revit, you get these fabrication buttons as part of the legacy software, okay? So for example, when you want to import or export out to MAJ, that will be found in the ribbon, in the contextual ribbon. whether it's insert or whether it's a contextual ribbon to export, those buttons will be embedded in there now, rather than you having to go to the add-on tab like you had to do previously. You will also find the export file, export.maj file is embedded in Revit's actual export tool menu here as well. Okay, so you can see the MEP Fabrication export tool is embedded in there. So just be aware of that. If you're working in 2021 or 2022, you do not need to go to the add-ins tab or install that for that matter as an extension, as an add-on. It is all part of Revit now. Okay, some of the other newer features that and functionality that exists with these fabrication workflows in Revit now as well is the reporting side of things. So some of those reports that you may be used to using within, say, CAD MEP or EstMEP, you can have access to those reporting options within Revit now. So there is a print reports button that will appear in the ribbon for Revit. And you can set up those fabrication reports directly in Revit and not have to take that out to CAD MEP, for example. So you have some abilities to set that up there, as now Revit has the ability to modify those existing fabrication reports also. Let's just quickly talk now in terms of loading in a custom database into Revit. So there's a few things to be aware of if you're trying to get a fabrication database to be available and so that you can access it within your Revit session. So first thing to be realized is that you won't see your custom databases straight away within Revit unless you've added them as a link to your legacy fabrication software. When you install Revit, you will see a example or a sample of Revit MEP, both Imperial and Metric, if you choose to load both. Revit does ship with an example database for each, and that might be all you see. Okay. Second thing to realize is if you do have any of those legacy fabrication softwares installed, i.e. CAD MEP, EstMEP, or CAM, you will also potentially see those out-of-the-box databases that come with those softwares. They will also be available in Revit as well. And then it's not until you actually add your own custom one, like I've got an airside one here that I've added the path into my EstMEP. It is in this case, this screenshot. I've clicked the add link button. I've pathed to that airside database. And as soon as I've added that link in any of those fabrication softwares, in this case EstMEP, I did it, that will then appear in Revit. In the Revit window, which is this screenshot on the right-hand side, you will be able to go into the fabrication settings, click on the fabrication configurations pull-down menu, and you will be able to access, you'll be able to find that database that you've loaded. Provided, the key here is that you have done it in the same version of your fabrication software that matches the version of Revit that you're trying to use. So that's critical as well. It needs to be the same version too. We'll have a little bit of a look at that in the live demo in a sec. So let's go and have a look at that now. So I'm just in a blank project here in Revit. I firstly just want to show just a few little tips in actually loading in a database. So in Revit, when you jump up to the Systems tab, you can click on the Fabrication Part button, and this will open up the MEP Fabrication Parts window here. From there, you can go into the settings, and it's within here that you can click into the fabrication configurations that you have loaded, and you can then choose to load the services that you want to. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jump over into an example of EstMEP here, and this is where I was talking about where you can add the links. Okay, so if you've got the any of those fabrication softwares loaded, as I said, you will get these out-of-the-box sample libraries that come through. Okay, these two are the sample Revit ones that come shipped with Revit. They're like a cold version of these overall fabrication out-of-the-box libraries. Okay, so if you've installed Revit and you've installed one of the fabrication products, you will you should at least have access to these sample libraries. Okay, but it's not until you add your own custom ones that then you'll see them in Revit. So what I've done here, I've added one called Airside here, which is our A2K database, which we're going to dive into a little bit later. If I click on the add link button, this is where you can browse to that path. So I'm going to my typical place here for the Autodesk Fabrication databases. It's under public and public documents is the default typical location. You select the version of the fabrication product that you need. So in this case, 2021, and then you can add that path in. So you save the folder basically to that location within Windows, and then you come in here, add link, you select it, and you click the select button, and that adds the path as a link to your fabrication. That's it. As soon as you've done that, not only is it obviously accessible within the fabrication software here, and I can create a job from that database, but what it also means, as I said, is coming back into Revit, it means that you can access those same databases here within Revit. So I can click on airside. I can generally you have to click on reload configuration if it's grayed out like this. It's just a thing that Revit needs you to do the way they've set it up, so that any changes that have been made to the database since you were last in there will be updated. So I can then choose the one I want. So let's say I want airside low pressure. I add that service in, and then that will load those parts into Revit. Okay, so I'm going to jump into another sample project here now, because I just want to show you some of the new parts that we have that we've now released within the A2K fabrication database that's going to be released, that is being released alongside our A2K MEP Revit template, and that works, they coincide and work with each other. Okay, so there's been a few new features and new parts that have been added to this database. So I'm just going to highlight some of the main ones. If I just have a look here at the services, if I expand out the group, okay, these services have been named logically, for example, between low pressure and high pressure and fire rated, for example. If I just expand out the group of this low pressure supply, you can see that this has now been expanded a bit further as to what we had previously. We have, as well as the regular ones you would expect in here, we've added some fittings with holes. We've got a whole bunch of new hangers that have been added in as well. These fittings with holes, which I'll show you some functionality with some access panels in a minute, have been added in as well. Okay, so let's just jump back to the rectangular fittings for a sec. You'll notice that we've added some pull-down menus here that lets you access not only things like those extra fittings with holes, but for example, with the square bend now, we have two essentially iterations of this. Okay, so you have a square bend that's just a general square bend with no turning vanes, but we also have a few other types here. So the unrestricted square bend will now come in with turning vanes. Okay, so it works a little bit different to what you might be used to working with the Revit fittings, where you can kind of use the one fitting and just switch with a tick box, switch those turning vanes on and off, for example. With fabrication, it doesn't quite work like that. So we've set it up as two separate parts that you are then able to swap one to the other. Okay. Okay, next I want to take a look at these fittings with holes. So let's go to that group there. Okay, you can see there's a whole bunch of these fittings that have these access holes included in with them, okay, that will now work with Revit. And we are able to then place access panels on them. So I'm just going to show you that as a quick example. I'm going to just quickly flick to a 3D view here. And I'll just spin this around a little bit because it's a little bit easier to see. You see I've got one there already. Let's go maybe down here and I'll add this transition piece on. Okay, I'm not going to worry too much about the sizing. Okay, and by the way, as I said, you don't necessarily have to access these from that group. As I said, you can just from this direct rectangular group, you can access these by looking at or clicking on the pull down menu. You can access these fittings with holes. So coming back to here, okay, so I've added that transition on. What we've also got now is these extra access panels here. Okay, these will snap directly to, as well as being able to place them on the straight pieces, you have the ability now, with the way that this has been set up and customized within our A2K database, they will snap directly onto the holes on the fittings. Even you can see that's, which was not crossable previously, you can see that's even on the sloped side of that transition fitting. Okay, so some good functionality there that we've started to add in, and these are set created to these sort of standard industry sizes, but that's something we can even help you with further customizing that as well. Okay. Okay, and so the last thing I just want to point out here now with the A2K database is the installation specs. It's been expanded a bit, so let me show you. If I pick just a random piece there, I'm going to scroll down to the properties down to the installation specification field here. And if you click on that pull-down menu, you can see that we have expanded this out, and we've come up with a new naming, a logical naming convention for these installation specs. So you can see, first of all, the grouping, there's a list of construction ones, and then there, if I scroll down the list, you can see there's a list of design ones. So this has been built now with both sort of workflows in mind. The construction the construction installation specs here will be working off the metal size, and the design ones will be working off the airway side. So depending on what you're doing, what you need, you can pick either one of those. And you can see further to that we've logically named these with the material, the sizing, etc. So it's all nice and neatly laid out, okay, and quite user-friendly. The other thing I will just point out further to the installation naming is, and the installation types is, we have also added some installation abbreviations into those installation specs as well. So in terms of tagging, if you don't want to tag this whole long name, okay, you do have the ability now in Revit to be able to tag those abbreviations, which we have added into these fabrication parts. Just as a heads up, you won't necessarily see the installation abbreviations within the properties here. Okay, it's not exposed within the properties here as such, but when you're tagging, you will see installation abbreviation field that you can use within tags. Okay, just be aware of that. All right. The last thing I just want to quickly show within this live demo is I want to touch on our A2K revtag add-on tool now and show a few of the new features that we've just released in the last couple of months. Okay, so some of you might be familiar with this tool and be using it already. Just be aware that we have released a version 5 now of revtag, and there are a few new updates. So let me just quickly take you through those updates now. The first couple of things to mention is that we've made a bit of a change as to where you can access some of the buttons. Now, you would be familiar with previously, if you've used the tool, that there was the fabrication properties separate button up here that you used to click into to map out those unexposed or untaggable fabrication properties out to your custom shared parameters. What we have done is we've actually consolidated that within the configuration window. So you'll notice when you now go into the configuration window in version 5 of revtag, you'll see 2 tabs at the top here. Okay, first tab is the way it was always with the actual tagging configurations of the tag setup. So that nothing's really changed there, except for a few added sort of searching and navigation features in here. But the second tab is what I want to point out here. We've added the fabrication properties within this configuration window. So pretty much the logic here is that everything to do with setup and configuration is all done within this one window now. Okay, so you come into the fabrication properties, you add whatever fabrication property you want to tag, and then you add the shared parameter that you want to then map that to be able to tag it. Okay, and there's no limit. You can keep adding rows in as many as you want. Okay, once you've set all that up, the logic is that you don't necessarily need to be visiting this too often, right? This is just the configuration. The setup's done. You save that, and then all you need to do is basically click on the parameter sync. So there's now, all this button does now will sync that that mapping or those fabrication properties. Okay, because that's the button you're going to use all the time. So rather than you having to, previously you had to click into that, go into a dialog, and then access the sync button, it is now just a direct button here on the ribbon. Okay. And just to show an example of that in action, I'll just zoom into this bend here. You can see this bend at the moment has a radius of 250. Okay. If I edit that part, I can change that radius to another value. So let's say I change it to 200, click apply. You can see The geometry is updated, but the tag hasn't updated because that's not exposed. And this is where revtag comes into play. And I'll just quickly show you. If I just go back into the configuration, you can see that I've mapped in the properties. I've mapped that fabrication inner radius to the shared parameter RT underscore inner radius. Okay, so because that mapping's there, you can see that part there has this shared parameter loaded. So there's the RT inner radius there, not updated yet. But as soon as I come and click, keep your eye on that. As soon as I come to the revtag tool and click on the parameter sync, you can see sync complete. That's now updated to 200, and it's good to go, good to print. The next new feature of revtag is around the numbering. So let's have a quick look at that. I've laid out some air terminals here for this example because what we've added is the ability to have more options in terms of the way things order. So previously you were numbering, for example, duct runs in a connected run. So there was an order there. There was a path and those elements were connected. Those duct pieces were connected. So it was following that. Now what we've added is the ability to number other categories like air terminals, for example, and mechanical equipment, and then you can follow some logic around the ordering of that. So let me show you this. If you go into the numbering dialog, we have an added order options down that you can expand at the bottom here, and you can see there are a number of different order types and tag start points and selection options that you can use to tag these elements. So let's say, for example, I want to tag, I've got a random bunch of air terminals in a project, and they're not necessarily all in line. They might be a little bit offset. Revit will allow, there's a tolerance for that. Okay, it'll generally go in columns or it'll go in spirals. Okay, so you've got clockwise and counterclockwise ordering, or you've got left to right or top to bottom. So let's say I want to label these ones from top to bottom. Okay, in sort of order in each kind of column here, and I want to start at the top left. Okay, I've added a tag already to these to this model here, so they're unpopulated at the moment because the label parameter is empty. So that's what I'm going to populate now with these numbers. So the logic of the numbering still follows the same method. So I choose the category I want to label here or number. So in this case, air terminals. I then go through and choose for the prefix and the counter and the padding, the same as I've done previously. So I've got a prefix here. I'm going to start the counter at 1. I've got a padding of 2. I've got no suffix, and the parameter that I want to populate here is the label parameter. Okay, so that's what how I'm labeling. Okay, what am I labeling now, and how am I going to do it? So I'm going to choose the select window option. I'm going to choose top to bottom. Okay, and I want to start from the top left. Okay, so that's my options. Okay, we also have an offset option here as well as a tolerance if you want to add that in as well, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to purely click order now, because then I can do my selection window around my whole window. Imagine this is like a layout of a floor. 9 items are updated. Click close, and you can see that has now populated and numbered those from 1, 2, 3 down the first sort of column there. And so on it goes. Okay, and that then concludes the live demo. So I just want to jump back into a couple more slides here, okay, just to touch on that actual new release of revtag. So be aware that it is now version 5, that is the latest release with those new features that I've just taken you through. So if you need to access that, you can visit the A2K Technologies website. There's a link down there, bottom right. And you can download a 30-day trial of the tool if you're not already using it, or you can download the new version from there. If you have any issues, just reach out to us. We're happy to help with getting set up with it. Okay. And that pretty much concludes the webinar, guys. Fairly short and sweet. Hopefully, you've been able to take a bit away from that. So thanks for attending. Please visit A2K Technologies events page if you want to see what our upcoming webinars are. And yeah, if you need any more information, please contact info@a2ktechnologies.com.au. But otherwise, guys, thanks for watching and have a great day.